Hello and welcome to the Dream Job Ready podcast and video series. My name is Dane Sharp, I'm your host, and my guest for this episode is Christine Rodrigues, who's the Strategic Alliances Manager at Adobe and a board member for the Girls in Tech Australia organisation.
Please note that the opinions of guests are their own and not those of the companies they have worked for. This is Dream Job Ready with Dane Sharp.
G'day Christine, thank you so much for joining me as a guest on Dream Job Ready. First up, I just want to say a huge congratulations because you've actually got a new role as of a couple of months now, and I'm going to read this straight from LinkedIn, should I say. Strategic Alliances Manager, Adobe Exchange DX at Adobe. So congratulations. Thanks for joining us. Tell us about the new role.
Thank you for having me and thank you for the congratulations. Yes, my new role is an expanded role at Adobe. So I now look after technology partners and our program across the entire Adobe suite. So previously I was just with the Magento side of the business, and now I get to play in all the different Adobe buckets and learn more technology and more partners and a bigger ecosystem. So super excited about doing that, and still across the region, so Asia Pacific, which is what I love.
One of the key reasons I wanted to talk to you was I thought and still believe you had a dream job, 2 months ago and for the last year as technology partnerships, APAC, including Japan for Magento. Tell us about that role as well, and your last year focusing on what that role had.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I came from the eBay Inc. business, and Magento used to be part of eBay Inc. So I had a lot of exposure to the Magento ecosystem and the technology partners through my previous roles. And the role that came up at Magento was brand new. It had never been done before in the world. And it was really taking all our global alliances and our partnerships that we had from mainly in North America and a couple in Europe, and really activating and helping those partners carve out a footprint and get to know the teams within the Magento business across APAC. And for me, that was pretty exciting because I knew a lot of them from before, knew a lot of the technology, but I also got to open myself up to a whole new range of a bit more, I would say, a little bit of the complicated and boring stuff that I'd previously ignored, and learn all about different technology like PIMs and like warehouse management and all this like crazy stuff that fed into the back of eCommerce. So for me, that role was almost like a stepping stone from the ecosystem I was in into a bit more of a broader one, and not just looking at sort of payments where I came from, but back-end technology, front-end technology, and how that end-to-end e-commerce experience existed. And for me, that was a really big step up from what I was doing before, and expanding my mind across so many different facets and so many different companies that I would never have been exposed to. So for me, that role was almost great because it didn't exist and I got to create what I wanted from it, but I also got to learn and meet a whole bunch of people along the way who are still my partners now, in varying factors.
And it's super refreshing to hear that you've somewhat carved and created that role yourself, because Adobe obviously is a huge business. And I'd love you to talk to kind of how diverse the company is, because I'd say, talk to a different person and they're going to know something different about Adobe, and some might be about the products in the suite, some might be, that B2B back-end tech stack. Was that common at Adobe to be able to sort of, I guess, create your own destiny and carve that role in a way that you saw fit?
So I think the Magento role that was brought to me was someone's idea, or a couple of people's ideas, saying, you know what, we have this really good set of partners and we have really good team and really good footprint. How do we bring that to life? And they could obviously see there was a gap there. And my managers were quite supportive in like, we know there's a gap and we know there's good work to be done and we know we can achieve things, but we really need you to go in there and like uncover and unearth and find your way and pave your way through those challenges or through those opportunities. And because they're all in the US mainly, they can't be boots on the ground. They couldn't actually physically get to any of the offices or even cross over time zones. So they really put a lot of faith in my ability and my network and my ability to sort of network within the business to sort of carve out what that looked like. And I guess in your career, you really need to, for me, I like to find roles where I can build things. And, once I build the Lego and, it starts cranking, then I kind of put it off to someone else to, do the renovations. I really like to sort of build those things from scratch. So for me, because the role didn't exist, no one really had a firm idea of what they wanted me to do. They just know what they wanted me to achieve. How
Right.
to do it was kind of on me.
Oh, that's very cool. And did you hit the ground running in that role, or did it take, a few months to kind of establish that framework and build from there?
Because I knew the majority of the business practices and different buckets of partners from previous
Yeah.
lives, I really had to hit the ground running. My first day of work was in a quarterly business review in Singapore. Like
Right.
I flew in on the Sunday night. Like it was no breathing room. There was no do your training. I didn't even have a computer or a laptop. It was like, or a phone. It was like, you are now in this business. You're in these meetings. And by the second day, I got pretty vocal. I think the first day I was just, oh, I'm new, I'm going to be quiet. And everyone's doing their planning and reviewing. By the second day, I was like, no, I'm family. There's 50 people in a room and I'm going to tell people what I think. So you really have to leverage your gut and what you know and what you can bring to the table. And I didn't have time with the size of the market that I need to take care of to really like pad my way through it. I had to just take the bits that I knew and run with those while I simultaneously upskilled in things that I didn't know about, like at the same time, which was the Adobe business and some of the partners and some of the products that I hadn't been exposed to yet. So they took a bit of a backseat and a little bit of time while I just lit fires all over the place in the things that I did know. Yeah.
And obviously, before this role, and we'll talk through this during this chat, you obviously have built up some great experience, some great relationships, with partners and other key people, I'm sure, and just, sort of some hardcore work ethic working for some of the companies you've worked for. Before we sort of fly through that, I'd love to know, how did Adobe and Magento land you? How did you get that role?
I got referred in
Nice.
through a previous colleague or previous contact who is now a colleague who had been working in an agency that I had dealt with when I was at PayPal. And he and I had been in contact. He ended up going into Adobe. And then when this role sort of popped up, he looked at it and said that, there is no one else in this region that can do that role better than she can. And I just got this phone call and I wasn't working. I had left my previous job. I was lying on a beach in Byron Bay and someone called me and said, hey, we got this job. Are you interested? And they told me about it. And I was like, and someone said, we've been looking for you. And I said, sounds like you have been looking for me. Could we pick this up in 2 weeks? Because I'm lying on a beach. I'm having a good time. And they said, yeah, sure, we can wait. And I got interviewed a few weeks later when I got back home and grounded back into the work mindset. So it was kind of like a marriage, I guess. They were looking for someone and that just happened to be me.
Oh, that's fantastic. That comes up a lot, right? Like, not what you know, who you know. I don't think it's one or the other. They're not exclusive, but that's fantastic. So someone you've worked with previously has obviously, verbally written you an amazing reference, and Bob's your uncle in the role. That's gold.
Yeah,
And
pretty
what?
much.
Yeah, and I guess working within Adobe now, for any listener out there that loves the company, loves the brand, loves the products that Adobe's put out there, can you suggest good things? Can you inspire someone to go and work for Adobe? Is it a great company to work for?
Yeah, definitely. For me, there was only a limited amount of companies that I would probably look at. And I know that sounds really fussy and really Gen Y of me, but companies need to tick some boxes. And Adobe is one of those companies because there's a lot of different products, a lot of different solutions, a lot of different teams. Obviously, the company has great commercial acumen. We win a lot of awards for best workplaces and things like that. But also, there's so much room to grow and navigate and pivot and move across. I'm not necessarily one that wants to move up. I like to sort of go across within businesses. And Adobe is one of those companies where there's going to be a never ending supply of different things to do and different products and different growth, especially in a technology space where we're always adapting our technology or growing our technology or partnering with new technology. So if you're into a business that has headroom, it's definitely somewhere where you could plonk yourself as a company and then be there for 10 years, but never do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'd say if you're looking for companies that tick those boxes. Adobe is 100% something like that.
one of the reasons I started this podcast is I don't think there's one, scripture around getting a dream job. I think it's different for every person. Some people might have one or two in their career, others might have 5 or 6. How they got them is going to vary. How long they were in that dream job will vary, and I guess the motivations or the reasons that is a dream job will vary as well, right? So it's an open book, and there's no true course. The one thing I've found really interesting about your career is you've worked for some great companies. You've worked Vodafone, PayPal, Braintree, and now obviously Adobe. But then also, I think quite interestingly is, in those roles, you've also had a couple of different jobs, and either progressed or moved sideways to what you said before. And I'd love you to talk me through some of that. So that's what I'm really keen to unpack with you today, is kind of how you've done that, why you've done that, and I guess what's led to those progressions through each role, if we can.
Yeah, so there's a couple of facets in there. So yes, I have worked for some great companies, and I'm very fortunate to have started my career in a great company like Vodafone. But the precursor to that was I actually worked in a Vodafone store during university.
Gotcha.
So I was the first person to ever sort of wangle my way out of retail into the head office on a secondment. And I think one thing that has led to my sort of progression in my career is being able to find these gaps and sort of wedging yourself into it, or having the foresight to look for a role that doesn't exist or may exist in the future, or, and go for that role. So I had a marketing degree. I came out of university. I wanted a marketing job, but, there wasn't a marketing job there. So I took a job within the head office, which was an account-based type of role, managing the Coles and Woolworths group for Vodafone Prepaid. And I took that role. And while I was there, the marketing manager got pregnant. And then I had, 5 months to set my eyes on how I was going to get her job, and made that my vendetta for the next 5 months, doing my job and having a lot of coffees and conversations about, what would it take for me to take a step up into that, into what was not a entry level marketing role, but it was, an actual marketing role, without having any of the experience on the ground. So I think one thing that I would say is a good bit of advice is to not just look at what you're doing, but where you're going.
Sure.
And always have that one step, what would I like to do next? And if something comes towards you, like my new role now, like it came towards me, I was a little bit hesitant, but now I'm embracing it and I'm loving it and I'm doing it. And you just have to be able to take the opportunities that come your way as well. And a lot of mentors and supporters will kind of help guide you through that as you go. I mean, I'm not resistant, but I'm not always one to sort of want to, dive head first.
Yep.
And I need those people around me to say, actually, you can do this, or I think you'd be good at it, or actually, did you know there's a job over there that you might like, or have you had coffee with this guy? He's got an opening, or one of his teams got promoted, etc., etc. So They're some of the things that I think has helped me in that stepping stone across the different businesses.
Yeah, nice. That's really good advice. And it's interesting, when you say looking ahead, or sort of looking to that next opportunity, does that vary? Like, are you looking one year, 1 month, looking at different companies? Does that vary every opportunity?
So I try to say you don't look too far ahead. I'm not one to make like a 10-year plan. I don't know what my job is going to look like I know what the next 6 months of my job's going to look like, but I don't know what it's going to look like in 12 months, whether it's the same role, the same title, or a different team. I think you've got to really play to your strengths and know what you're good at, and move towards those strengths and really enhance what you can do. And it's great to have a really big, audacious goal, but for me, it's not really how I'm built. I like to sort of roll with the punches. Yep. And just know what I'm going to do maybe next. And then I find that's an easier goal to attain, because you're not saying I want to be a CMO tomorrow, or a CIO, or something like that. You're going, actually, I just want to be that guy or gal. Maybe when I want a staff member, or maybe I want to know more products, or maybe I want to be in that part of the business unit instead of the part that I'm in. And it's easier to take small steps and go towards that than it is to sort of say, well, I'm really overwhelmed. How do I become a CEO? That's a lot of steps. So I just kind of bite off what I can chew.
That's smart, achievable goals. Yeah.
Yeah, little ones, little things.
I like that. And throw me back. What was your goal when you were, I guess, finishing high school, heading to uni, end of your teens? What was your goal or your aspiration? What did you want to do when you grew up?
It's really funny. Actually, I went to a seminar at University of Wollongong when you go through all these like, what do you want to do in university? And I went to a seminar on international business.
Hmm.
And I was one of the only people out of my peer group that actually went to this seminar. It was this giant lecture theatre and probably about a dozen people in it. And they talked about this international business thing, and we're talking, the year 2000. So it seemed really, far away because we didn't have all the technology that we have now. So
Yep.
getting an international business job meant getting on a plane all the time. And for me, it really solidified what I wanted to do. So I ended up in a commerce degree, majoring in international business and marketing. And I also have an arts degree, majoring in Asia Pacific studies.
Yeah.
And so that was the goal. And then I left uni and did nothing to do with any of those sorts. And here we are, like 10 years later, I actually got a job which had an Asia Pacific remit. So it all kind of came to light eventually, but I kind of put it on hold because of life reasons and not being able to travel and other things. But it was always my passion to be in a role that covered the region. It's just so much easier to do it from my lounge room now than it is to have to get on a plane.
100%. And that's great. And because I was very interested in both the international business and the Asia Pacific studies part of your degree description. Because, I work in an APAC role myself. It's becoming more and more common, right? Like 5, 10 years ago, there was sort of, there was only a few people here and there that had it, where it's definitely more common now. And, the whole Southeast Asian region has been opened up to people in Australia, or if you're based in Singapore, etc. So that's cool that it's come around, and, it's hooked back into your current role now.
Yeah, it took a little while. And the beauty of having studied it, which most people don't get value out of a lot of their degrees, depending on what they study. Like one of my best friends has a marine biology degree and she works in a corporate.
Right.
But the good thing for me is I got to study politics and sociology and economics and a whole bunch of other things to do with the region and the culture. I even learnt Japanese for a while.
Wow.
And here I am, as a grown up, being able to sort of remember some of that stuff and not be afraid to walk in a room culturally, like the first time I went to Tokyo, and know how to conduct myself, because some of that stuff hasn't changed culturally in that amount of time. So it actually did pay dividends in the end.
Hey, let's walk through some of your earlier roles. Let's talk about PayPal. You spent just shy of 3 years at PayPal, a couple of different roles, reading again off your LinkedIn, marketing communications manager, and then on to acquisition marketing manager. Again, I imagine you got the opportunity to work with some really cool companies and some good people in those roles. I worked for eBay for a year. I never worked with PayPal, but had associated with plenty of people from the PayPal company. How was your time there? How was your 2.9 years at PayPal?
2.9 years. So PayPal was, I was with PayPal Inc. for almost 7 years. So the actual whole business, but the PayPal brand, yes, I was there for almost 3 years. And back then I was I was in the marketing discipline. That was my career. That was my job. And I am very niche. I'm in B2B. Like B2B acquisition is my claim to fame, lead generation, helping people get like through that funnel. So that's me. So it's pretty niche. So finding another business when I left Vodafone that had an opportunity to target other businesses was pretty rare.
Yep.
And I had to sort of spend a good 10 weeks or so sort of trudging through the different companies that I would work for. So PayPal gave me that opportunity to do what I had been doing the whole time, but take it down a different audience subset. The B2B brand in most companies is like the poor cousin of the consumer brand. So you're not there talking to people that need or want or necessarily have that mindset of I love your brand, because they're coming from the other side saying, well, why do I need this? Like, how is it going to enhance my business? And it's not the conversation of what it's going to do for you, but what is it going to do for your customer?
Yeah.
And so a business like PayPal was really good because it had a really strong consumer sentiment. It was very well known. It was the second or third most trusted brand in Australia. Oh, it was the third behind Band-Aid and Panadol.
Wow.
So it was the right time to be in a business like that. It was less than 100 people. So again, I got to build and learn and break things and learn quickly and try again. And when I left, it was a fair few hundred. So it was in that real growth phase of explosion, which was quite fascinating.
And you were working with SMBs at the start of that run as well with PayPal, right? What excites you about what really excites you about helping small businesses, big businesses, achieve success with the tools and technology that you've I guess been representing in different roles? Like, what's the exciting part of that for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a consumer marketer or a brand marketer in any sense.
Yeah.
I am very much in the B2B space. It's a longer sales cycle, it's harder slog, but they are less fickle in the long run.
Yeah.
It may take 6 to 12 months for a decision. When I went into PayPal, we still had a bus that we were driving around small towns encouraging businesses to go online. Like, we did a road show trying to get businesses to go online. Like, it was called Driving Business Online, pardon the pun. And I was running that project for a couple of years because people still hadn't got there yet mentally. And it was, online's just eBay. That's the kind of time when I came into the e-commerce segment. And it was like, no, online is not just for Woolworths, Dan Murphy's or eBay. It's actually for everybody. And fast forward, here we are 10 years later, and we're still having that conversation now with COVID, saying, actually, you should have been online if you thought about this, etc. So it was a really good place for me to want to help businesses, and they don't have to go in head first, but help them with a little bit. And payments is part of that big scary thing that they don't know. Money's very important to people, so they don't understand it. They're not just going to adopt a new way of doing things.
Agreed. And how do you avoid getting frustrated at some of the businesses that might knock you back or might not see where they should be going?
I think anyone in the B2B space, call it a PayPal, call it a Xero, call it anyone like a telco or a bank, they're saying, well, we can talk to the ones that are the more advanced and willing to sort of move, and that's a really quicker sell. And the rest, call it laggards, call it whatever, they will follow. They will get there eventually, but you can't channel all your energy into those that are just resistant to the change. Like I said, 10 years later, some of these businesses we were talking to are probably still coming on this journey, and they'll eventually see the light. So you really have to go for the ones in that. So the top 10%, that'll jump first, and the next set that will follow, and you'll see dividends and ROI on that, and the rest will drink the Kool-Aid eventually.
And key advice, if you could pass one thing on to someone that's just finishing their uni degree and looking to work in marketing, sales, like to help push them in the way of B2B, what's that sort of one piece of advice you could pass on, or one key nugget of a good reason to go and work in B2B?
If you really want, like, you have to be relentless. You have to be quite willing to take a few knockbacks. B2B is not an easy sell. It's a 6, 12, in the markets I'm in now, 2 years kind of a sales cycle. If you're a marketer, you need to work with salespeople, not against them. This is not a marketing person is not going to bring in $1 billion deal in the door. You need a collective of collaborators to bring in the deal. So if you like to work in virtual teams or have lots of stakeholders, there's lots of moving parts. That's where B2B is going to excite you. If you like that transactional type of stuff where you like to put out an ad and see the results from, X million hits, and that's more of a consumer play, then go for that instant gratification type stuff. But if you really want to build something, see how it goes, it's a bigger risk, it may fall over, there's a lot more riding on it. It's it's a bit more, I think it's, to me, a bit more challenging, and it's a bit more stressful, but it's definitely something that not a lot of people consider as a first point. But it's definitely something that I grew to love and still do.
That's good, honest advice. I like that. Hey, I'm going to jump to our listener question for this episode. We do one every episode. This one's from Tyler, and I'll read it. It's a lengthy comment, so I think it's a really good one to read. Tyler says, I definitely think a lot of graduates struggle entering an industry in which they studied. With many entry-level ads requiring several years' experience to be considered a worthy applicant, what suggestions or recommendations do you have for graduates trying to immerse themselves in industries they wish to join?
This is a little bit of a Christineism, but
Christineism, I like that.
I'm often caught saying, I'm not here to fly this airplane. I'm here to help you sell it. I am not a pilot. So you need to know the workings of how things get off the ground. You don't need to know how to fly the plane. So anyone that challenges me that I don't have enough experience to do something, and that would be anything from entry level to the job I'm doing now to whatever my next role is, I'd question, and I'd challenge them and say, look, I know I can do this. I believe I can do this. I've got all the necessary things to help this happen. Just because I haven't physically done it doesn't mean that I can't. And I have been lucky to have people sponsor me and support me through that journey. And, people have got to be willing to take a risk on you, that you do need to sort of to vocalize that. Just because you've never, built something doesn't mean you can't build it. Right. That's not a thing. Yeah. So I would say that I would challenge everyone with my little plane analogy, which I bring up pretty much in every meeting that I go to on a daily basis.
There you go. Tyler might steal your Christineism. I like that. Hey, what's the biggest in your current role now? What's the biggest thing you need to learn? What's the most exciting thing you think you need to learn in your current role?
In my current role, I need to learn the inner facets of our own business. There are so many teams and so many people that I need to bring along the journey that I'm now on. And I don't know who they are. I don't even know their names. They don't know who I am. And I need to not only learn where they fit in the organization, but I need to know what makes them tick. And that's an interesting thing. That could be personality wise, that could be motivational, that could be a whole bunch of different reasons. So I really need to get under the guts of learning, the inner facets of all our different teams in all our different markets. And, it's not a one size fits all approach. You cannot treat people in one place the same as you would in another, even in the same market. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge for me right now, is learning all the different nuances that are going to set my role apart in each market.
I mean, it sounds like stakeholder relationships and stakeholder management has been important to you throughout your career. So I'm sure you're going to crush it in this role as well. One thing I wanted to end on, should I say, is because I've heard you mention a couple of times mentors and getting support from different people. Can you talk to that very quickly? Have they come from people that you've worked directly with? Have they come from people elsewhere in the company or at other companies?
I would call it two buckets, mentors and sponsors, and I'm really clear on the two being very different. For me, mentors are someone that can help guide you, and they know you, and they don't have to be within your business. They can be anywhere within the industry, and the same with sponsors. They can be from anywhere. And they're the ones that you go to for the advice, and the directional stuff, and to bang out those ideas and the strategy and the what's my next career move, and they'll help you learn and grow. And they're a very big part of your career. Sponsors, in saying that, on the other side, are people that will also take the punt and push you and put your name in front of others, and are willing to introduce you to others and also open doors for you. So you need a little bit of a balance between those two. Not every mentor is going to be a sponsor, and definitely not every sponsor is going to be a mentor. But you need to, every time you go along the way in your career, you pick up these people. They might be a peer at one point, they might be a manager, they might be someone else's manager or senior person in the room. Get to know those people, have a coffee, show them the spark in you, and these people will be around for a very long time. Some people that I still talk to on a daily basis or a weekly basis or monthly basis, I met 12, 13 years ago, and they're still speaking volumes for me and helping open doors for me. And likewise, I do the same for others. So definitely get a good army of mentors and sponsors in your kit. And they could be at first a uni lecturer, if that's your only exposure for now. It could be someone like that.
And have you got any advice on how to best approach someone?
I think when you approach someone who you may want to be your mentor or sponsor, is probably not go at it and say, look, I want you to be my mentor, but really have a conversation and be quite frank about what you want to get out of that conversation. Some mentors you might catch up with, once every couple of years, and some you might have regular communication with, but you've got to be really frank about why you want to have that conversation. So if they do, allow you to have a coffee, or even if you've got 15 minutes of someone's time, just be really succinct around, I'd like to get this out of this interaction. Part of it might be you want to know about them, you might want to know about their company, you might want to know what opportunities exist, or maybe what they think of you. And as long as you're really transparent and authentic, a lot of people are willing to give you their time. You'd be quite surprised that it happened to them previous to you asking them. So people love to pay it forward. So don't be afraid to ask someone, even if they're super senior. Just be really clear about what it is you want to know.
And has anyone approached you? Do you mentor any people that you work with or students out there?
I wouldn't say I mentor. I am on the board for a Girls in Tech not-for-profit.
Yep.
So I do get asked a lot for advice and how to go about things. I do have some people that come to me in different parts of their career journey. So if they were looking at a new role, or they wanted to get into a role like mine, a lot of people do ask me for a coffee and say, how would I go about this, either in their existing company or in another company. And the Girls in Tech community, where there's a band of volunteers and a community. So my door's always open for people in and outside that network. So I do get a lot of people approaching me, but I wouldn't say I mentor anyone specifically on like a regular basis. But I do sponsor a lot of people. If I think you're really good at what you do and you want to use me as a reference and things like that, I will throw my hat in the ring for a lot of people, and have done so in the past. And people take risks on me, and I take risks on others. That's what you've got to do. Support those.
And you mentioned Girls in Tech. Sounds like a great initiative. Someone that's mentioned to me before, and someone I know that you'll know, is my episode 3 guest, Carolyn Breeze. Carolyn was at eBay when I was there, worked for Braintree, and has done amazing things both in Australia and globally for women in tech and girls in tech. What does that Girls in Tech initiative do and I guess portray for the industry?
Well, I know Carolyn very well. We've been at 3 companies together, and in the same team, so I know her very well. She recently was a guest and mentor at one of our Girls in Tech Australia. So it's a very tight-knit community, and women in tech, or diversity in tech, is a much broader concept. And I'm a very big supporter, and I speak on panels and go to other people's events as well, who are part of a movement, which is basically an inclusive movement. I don't think I've had a real issue with inclusivity in my own career, but I know that there are others that have had roadblocks and things like that. The Girls in Tech Australia that I'm a part of, we're an open network. It's not just for girls, it's not just for women, it's for everybody. And it's all around sort of educating and sharing and building a community of people that have similar interests and similar career path or aspirations, and opening up doors to people like ourselves, or like individuals like Carolyn that have a good story, and they can learn from each other, as well as learn from their peers. So I'm a really big believer in any inclusivity or diversity movements across all categories. And it could be super technical, or it might just be, women who'd like to be in what's deemed as tech, but the tech arm of a traditional business. So there's definitely a lot of bridging work that needs to be done, and lots of cheese and wine that is had throughout the process as well.
I imagine this would be a great networking opportunity, and a great chance to meet people for those that maybe aren't as brash or as outwardly open to going and chatting with someone on their own. This would be a good avenue to do that, right?
Yeah, definitely encourage anybody who is nervous to go into these events, whether they be Zoom events now or in-person events. Everybody's super open. That's why they're there. They want to learn. They want to learn off each other. And, although I sound like it, I am not naturally an extrovert. I am not a natural networker. My job is to be a professional networker. But at first I was really nervous, and I started to go to these things on my own, and just sort of walk up to people and say, hi, I'm Christine. This is what I do. Who are you? What can I learn from you? And as soon as you start framing it like, what can I learn from someone else? The conversation is less nerve-wracking because you're really just there to listen. And networking is a massive part of your career journey, and people can be not on board with it as much as they like. But again, it's like you said, it's not what you know, it's who you know and how you get there. And building a network of sponsors, peers, mentors, and colleagues is definitely going to push your career leaps and bounds.
That's a great share, and you guys are doing a great job with that initiative. So good luck with that. And I just want to say, great and good luck with your new role as well. It's going to be a pivotal opportunity for Adobe and yourself as we come out of this whole coronavirus crisis. There's going to be ample opportunities for B2B and businesses to kind of grow and flourish after this. So I wish you nothing but success. Thank you so much for being a guest on Dream Job Ready. It's been great to talk to you, Christine.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure.